Welcome to the CFB Dynasty podcast with hosts Matt Knowles and Brian McElfresh.
Hey everybody, how you doing out there? It is the hot heat of the summer, and what that means is right around the corner, it's time for college football and also college fantasy football. My name is Matt Knowles. I'm here with the founder and the creator of CFB Dynasty, Mr. Brian McElfresh. BMac, how are you feeling today knowing the college fantasy season and the college season are right around the corner?
It's crazy, man. I can taste it. So just excited that we're actually getting like camp footage for the first couple days now. So it's pretty great, man. Can't wait to get into my first draft and all that stuff.
I think it's pretty crazy how just because of the way that the dates fell this year, and with pro football and college football having to expand their season to fill in these extra weeks, that we now had legitimate preseason games starting in July for the first time ever. We've got week 0 and week 1, both in August in college, which is great on one hand, but on the other hand means everybody needs to be prepping for these fantasy drafts earlier and earlier, and that's why we're here.
Home leagues is 17th. Right?
Yep, 17th home league for the CFB home league. And then we've got the CFB Dynasty Open League, CFB Dynasty Masters League. Last year, those things were a smashing success. The Masters League invites went out in the last couple of days. If you're somebody that believes you should be in the Masters League, you should have that invite out there. Make sure you get in there and let us know, confirm that you're going to be in the league or not. So that way we can get the schedule set, we can get the draft day set. And if you're somebody that wants to be in the open league, like BMac, like Doug, I mean, let me tell you, but there's promotion and relegation, and you got to earn your way into the Masters, and you got to stay in the Masters. Well, with top performance last year, that did not happen for BMac.
Yeah,
so,
I took 2 guys that ended up really not playing. I know Corey Moore was like, there's a lot of positive news going into the season, and then he just doesn't even play. Will he play this year? He's on track to be back again for his 11th season. And then we've got there was someone else too that I took that just didn't cut it. Can't take 2 picks in your first 4 that suck. But I mean in college fantasy you do have and Danny, like Tucker killed it on the waiver wire as did many others. Like if you ruin your draft, you still have a chance, man, in college fantasy.
And
so I'll be in the open. I'll be in the open for sure. Got to earn my way back.
Having Doug, having the one, the only, Uncle Joe is going to be in the open league this year. He's ready to go smash people. So if you're in there, just know that Joe is coming for your throat because he wants to be in that Masters. He was upset that we couldn't just give him a bye straight into the Masters. Like, dude, you got to earn your way, man. You don't just get to get put into the Masters. That's not how being a master works. You got to earn that black belt in fantasy football. You got to get there.
Yep. I earned my way out of that league. So here we go.
If you want to be in the CFB Dynasty Masters League, make sure you hit us up. Let us know so that way we can get you an invite. We got to get those positions confirmed, and we'll go from there. So today we're going to be talking about the top 10 quarterbacks and some other news about quarterbacks projections going into this season. So for those of you that are not familiar with the way that CFB Dynasty derives the rankings, VMAC, you want to walk somebody through really quick. How is it that these rankings are derived for the site?
Yeah, sure. And I'll try and do good for the non-YouTubers, the podcasters, which majority of you are. So anywhere from the homepage or anywhere on the site, you can go to Draft Prep, Draft Central. Draft Central is where all the links are for everything. Obviously, if you go to Rankings CFF, you'll see like the teaser rankings for quarterbacks, running backs, and receivers, and a little bit of content about them. But overall, the main stuff you'll find on Draft Central. So yeah, Draft Central here. You'll see the countdown. You'll want to make sure you're logged in, and then you've got standard rankings and a cheat sheet for quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, kickers, and defenses that have been ready, as well as the middle tier there, which keeper and dynasty leagues. So Lastly, we have Debbie there all the way to the right, and those are ready for you to consume. So standard rankings, the redraft rankings, you'll see some stat projections in there. So everything is built off of the last 3 most recent seasons of positional rankings per coach. And you'll see all the stat projections adjusted for, player transfers out and transfers into a new system or a worse system for him, then you're going to see those projections based on that. So there are other reasons too. So you take somebody, for example, we were talking about pre-show, Byron Brown. Incredible season a couple years ago as he kind of burst onto the scene. He's got an amazing coach for an amazing system for him to thrive, but then you just look at the strength of schedule, and he's just basically unstartable in the fantasy playoffs. He's unstartable like the first month of the year, and then you can play him in that like conference middle section a little bit, but those kind of things matter. So that's why we have the rankings set up where you can see, the stat projections. Of course, you can see the bye weeks, of which every team has multiple. And then you can see the fantasy playoffs on the far right, which, again, big deal as you're preparing for your first few picks, players that you're going to want to be in your starting lineup more often than they're not. You want to make sure they're going to be able to be started during the fantasy playoffs. So you look at somebody like John Mateer here. Oklahoma is well documented, one of the toughest schedules in the country. And in the fantasy playoffs, if you make it there, he's got at Alabama versus Missouri and then versus LSU. LSU was terrible at defense last year, but you expect them to make a leap. So we'll go over all of these rankings. And of course, as you have questions, let me know. But the basis of these are the depth charts, which are live, accessible to members. So those are all updated, and there will be plenty of updates throughout camp season as we get closer and closer to the season. And then we move into the weekly show with weekly rankings, talking about, of course, college fantasy football, but then we get into a lot of the FanDuel DraftKings stuff.
And always the brisket lock. We'll make sure that brisket lock is back, because with BMAC, you always want to risk it for that brisket.
I can't wait to hear that drop.
All right, so today we're going to be looking at what CFB Dynasty ranks as the top 10 quarterbacks, and we'll go into some other notes as well, and the transition from the 2024 season to 2025. I think that, and BMAC, you tell me if you agree or disagree. I feel like this season, fantasy-wise, has probably got the most question marks across the board when it comes to who's going to be the top guys. And I don't mean the top 1 or 2. I mean, normally you can go into a season and you're like, the top 10 guys, a lot of these names are names that we've heard before. They're names that are consistent. They're at the program that they were at the previous season. It just feels like this season is just absolutely across the board, the biggest question marks I think ever since we started doing this, 15, 20 years ago.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I think it can be a little bit summed up in what Arch Manning said. Obviously, at SEC Media Days, obviously we're always about the hype and about the potential, and kind of you can see a path, right? You can see a path where this guy becomes a star and he's got great receivers and a great offensive line. But in the portal era, it just makes it harder. And with all the talent that was lost, yes, the top running backs from the last couple of years are gone. A lot of quarterbacks are gone, and you've got big time programs replacing star quarterbacks from the fantasy ranks. And there's a lot. You look at, so Arch Manning, what he said, going back to that, is basically, so far it's just a bunch of hype. I've got to go prove it on the field. And that's obviously what we've got to see. But you take a look at who we have at number 1 there, Cade Klubnik. He looked terrible his first couple seasons. Gets an improvement on the receiving core and new offensive coordinator. year 2, and things were a lot better. And now he's talked about as a, kind of realizing his big potential as a recruit finally. And he could be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft next year. And he's number 1 on our fantasy rankings with an amazing set of returning receivers. So year to year, yeah, it's hard. There's a lot of movement, just player movement that makes it difficult.
Yeah, you look at the top 10, and what is it? Over half of them are either quarterbacks replacing somebody who transferred out, or they're somebody who did transfer into a new school. I mean, you look at John Mateer at number 6. John Mateer was a beast in his previous stop. Is he going to stay that way at Oklahoma? You look at Maverick McIver at 4. Maverick McIver at 4 has not as much to do about him, but something that's frustrating in fantasy. Maverick McIver, number 4 in the rankings. Both myself and BMAC had last year's starter at Western Kentucky in different leagues, who now goes to FAU and Caden Veldkamp, and now he's in the top 40, 50 maybe, because he went to that. So it's so hard to know how to, especially in a dynasty setup, to prepare yourself as you go forward, because we both thought that we had the guy that was going to be the next guy up in this high-powered, high completion, high yardage offense, and now he's gone to a different school, and it's somebody else that was on nobody's radar last year who's going to be the one taking over that team.
Yeah, McIver comes over from like Abilene Christian, where he went for, I think he threw for 3,800 yards and 30 touchdowns, 7 picks with negative 39 rushing yards. So you're going to get that true pocket passer where that offense has really thrived in the past. So I can't wait. He comes over too, I think, with his offensive coordinator, and excited to see how that kind of changes things back to where we see, maybe the possibility of 3 Western Kentucky relevant wide receivers in fantasy week in and week out. And obviously, if one of them takes off and gets a bunch of touchdowns, like that could easily be wide receiver 1 by a long shot.
One of the things also to take a little look at there with Maverick McIver, there is a ton of week 0 games this year. And so everybody's going to have 2 byes. Western Kentucky's got 3 byes, including the first week of the college fantasy playoffs. So if you're somebody that's getting him in a season-to-season league, not a dynasty league, you might want to pay attention there, because automatically you're going to have somebody else that's going to have to start at least 2 of those weeks, and then possibly a third, unless you're going to be getting a bye into the second round of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is a good one to kind of look at, where we see Veldkamp leave, who was more of a runner, and McIver come in. So as we're going in, I'm looking at the data in the back end here. So we have like a minus 95% on the rushing modifier, which basically pulls that rushing data down and is less than a touchdown and like 7 yards on the season projected for him. And then a decent bump on the passing, only a 13% bump on the passing mod, which was very conservative. It could easily be north of that, but even just a 13% bump based on the last 3 years for that offense, 4,200 yards, 36 touchdowns projected, 12 picks, putting him 4th in fantasy projection. But yeah, it definitely could go way north of that if they're clicking from the beginning.
So otherwise, on the top 10, we started off, we already talked about Cade Klubnik. Dante Moore takes over for the quarterback that's in the 5-person quarterback battle at the Cleveland Browns. You got Dylan Gabriel. So Dante Moore, let's talk about him a little bit, from Oregon. You got him ranked at number 2 coming in. That's pretty big shoes to fill to be the number 2 guy preseason for Dante Moore.
Dual threat quarterback, comes over with experience, although he didn't really play a lot last year. And Novosad behind him also looks like he can be a really good quarterback, but it seems like people are pretty confident it's going to be Dante Moore. So for him, we have really, it's like more of an experience, like dropping him down 16% on a passing mod, dropping 9% on the rushing mod compared to the Bo Nix seasons and Dylan Gabriel. So still pretty conservative, I feel like, and he's number 2. I think that offense could click and do really well. And then you like what you see in the fantasy playoffs. Like you did mention Maverick McIver, who's got it tough. Like you lose him except for the second time because you're not going to start him at LSU on championship week. At least hopefully you're not. Hopefully you've got better options than that. Minnesota, USC at home, at Washington. Not a cakewalk, but Oregon's got the horses to run with it. Does he have the receivers? That's the one thing. They lost their wide receiver 1, Evan Stewart, to injury, out for the year. And we'll have to see how really that whole receiving core shakes out. They got a lot of talent and a lot of people that have been around. They should be great still under Dante Moore.
All right, if you go down, Parker Navarro from Ohio is number 3. One of the interesting things about Navarro is that, as you can take a look there, he's got the least number of passing yards and passing touchdowns by a large bit in the rankings. Yeah. But he's the only one that is projected to be a near 1,000-yard rusher. So he's a true dual threat at quarterback. Let's talk about Parker Navarro just a little bit there at Ohio.
Yeah, Navarro, obviously, rushing threat. We've got him at 900 yards and 15 touchdowns, which would be less than last year. We just, as quarterbacks age a little bit and get more comfortable reading defenses, and within the offense, they'll pass it a little bit more, but he's still going to run a ton. So obviously, dual threat quarterbacks and those rushing touchdowns that can win you leagues when you're weak. It takes really a special pocket passer, and that Western Kentucky has done it before, again and again. Maverick McIver is the only non-dual threat running back in the top 10. The rest of them are projected 5+ touchdowns almost.
All right, so we have talked about McIver. Then you go down to Owen McCown. So one thing before we talk about McCown that I think is very interesting, and I can't remember the last time that we saw something like this. In the rankings, top 7 positions come from 7 different conferences. So you've got 7 conferences in a row represented in the top 7, which shows that this year, on paper at least, it's not about one conference coming out, going to hit on all cylinders, going to be, the conference of throwing the ball down the field. It's got a good spread all the way across. So Owen McCown representing the 5th different conference, the American, not even the AAC anymore, just the American conference. Let's talk about Owen McCown and the Roadrunners there.
Yeah, he's got experience. He's coming back and runs the ball well. He's projected for 5 touchdowns and a really favorable schedule, especially also in the fantasy playoffs there. So like Owen McCown a lot. Mateer, man, that's one at 6 that I debate. I feel like the stat projections are pretty conservative. With that schedule, man, I just don't know. It's hard to it's that them and Florida, who are both it's just really weird, where I think Florida has the 12th or 13th best odds to win the national championship, but the over-under win total is like 7.5 because of the schedule.
Florida's schedule is absurd. It's absurd.
Yeah, and Oklahoma's right there, number 2 difficulty. So they're the hardest ones to project over-under and all that stuff. They're the hardest ones in fantasy as well, like Mateer, Lagway. I know with Lagway, he's one. If you don't know, I was born in Gainesville. I'm a full-on Gator fan. I cannot wait. I will be there week 1, despite the insane and unbelievable slate of games that we have week 1. But he's one where people are like, oh, can he get to 40 touchdowns this year? And he's definitely got that potential. However, I've tried to really and he could do that, but we've got him like down there at like 25. And could Mateer finish down that low because of the schedule? Potentially, but because Mateer was so good last year, I think that offense is going to thrive. I think with Deion Burks fully healthy, hopefully, Burks is going to blow up and be definitely a wide receiver one type of player in fantasy this year.
All right, so then we've like I said, we talked about McCown, talked about Mateer. Let's go to Sam Levitt, representing Conference 7 of 7, Arizona State.
Went to the playoff last year. Man, they lost the heartbreaker to Texas, and he's one that could take off. This could be conservative. He's one that I play that could absolutely compete in a top 3 kind of spot because he's got Jordan Tyson, his top wide receiver, coming back. So if he stays healthy with Levitt's running ability, that's really going to be the variable where we have him projected for 4 rushing touchdowns. Well, if he gets 8, that puts him in the top 5. And it's just one of those things that could be as simple as, okay, they're running a read option in the red zone, and we'll see which one the edge player goes at and determines who's going to get that touchdown. But I like Levitt a lot as a player. He does have a bye week in the fantasy playoffs week 1, but then West Virginia and at Colorado. So you feel great on those 2 starts.
So then we'll go to the guy that's taken over for probably one of the most talked about 7th round quarterbacks in a while, Quinn Ewers, who went to my team, the Miami Dolphins. I'm like, why is this dude at the rookie symposium getting the picture as the face of the Dolphins draft this year? But because it's Quinn Ewers in the 7th round, which is pretty crazy. But finally, it's Arch Manning's job. There's no question he is the guy. How much of a guy do you think he's going to be? Do you think he's going to be truly the next Manning, or do you think that it's going to be a lot of talk and not really going to be the production?
I think he's got all the tools, but it's a lot of new there. So they're losing a few top wide receiver targets, replacing some offensive linemen. They have so they've got Baxter coming back, but Wisner is still there as the starter. So they'll have a couple great running backs, new wide receivers, and he's got QB1 potential in fantasy, for sure. In that offense, their schedule is quite the opposite of Oklahoma, where it's absolutely workable. And he does finish in the fantasy playoffs at Georgia, then against Arkansas, then against A&M.
That's definitely not a good. So that's definitely not a good playoff slate right there.
Yeah. I mean,
you might want to find yourself a group of 5, group of 6 quarterback as your backup if you've got Arch Manning, because I would not be happy with that as my only quarterback option in the playoffs.
Yeah, it just depends on how good that offense takes off. Like if Wingo or DeAndre Moore take off as wide receiver 1 and everything else kind of falls into place, this is a guy that could, like I said, he's got QB1 ceiling. We don't have him projected there, but yet he's got the talent to do it on the ground. Lethal, like that offense is going to be really hard to stop.
All right, so we got 2 more that round out. Let's talk about both of these guys real quick at 9 and 10. Let's give us some intel on our number 9 and number 10 there.
Yeah, so Marchiol there, West Virginia, a big-time runner. We've got him projected 800 yards, 8 touchdowns on the ground, and 22 touchdowns through the air, 12 picks. So dual threat guy. He's going to run it a ton at West Virginia. And West Virginia offense is trending. Like they're someone that, we didn't pay attention to for a while there, just kind of like a middling in their conference kind of team. But I think that offense is trending up in the right direction. Tough playoff fantasy slate, though, with at Arizona State bye week and then Texas Tech, who's going to be one of the most talented teams there in that conference. And then Josh Hoover, who kind of took off last year. He's going to start at TCU. Pretty tough slate for that conference in the fantasy playoffs, but overall he's proven and someone that you're comfortable with. There are some guys, though, that I don't know if we can shift to this now, but some guys that I think talent-wise or, kind of just based on the system that they're in, that was hard to leave them outside of the top 10, like a Lenore Sellers. Like, he could finish quarterback 1. Like, insane talent, amazing running, amazing size. You hear him being talked about as like a potential top 3 quarterback, a top 3 pick in the NFL draft, and potentially even up to QB1, depending on if Arch comes or goes and how Arch's season goes. Like, Sellers is talked about right after Arch every time. And then,
as I say, we can roll right down, because on the, if you go to the website, there's some free content. There's content you have to have a account to be able to get to, but part of the free content, you have an article up there with the top 10 quarterbacks. You talk about some sleepers and breakouts to target. Let's go straight to there. Some sleepers and breakouts to target, and we can kind of cover some people there.
Yeah, for sure. So Micah Alejado, obviously Hawaii freshman. He could be maybe the next Timmy Chang. Timmy Chang started young and as a quarterback at Hawaii, and they ran that air raid, and he was incredible running it. And now Timmy Chang's calling the plays, and Alejado should get that start as a redshirt freshman. And man, if Hawaii comes back as a great offense under Timmy Chang, it'll just be awesome. Because I think that ties back to when we started, 18 or so years ago, and they were just a machine. So it would be cool to see them come back under Timmy Chang. But
and it's felt like the last couple of years that Hawaii is right there on the cusp of being a breakout offense, and there'll be a week here or there, or a player here or there that has a blowout week, but they just haven't felt like that Hawaii offense from back in the day. But it feels like they're right there on the cusp. So they could be the next Western Kentucky of a couple of years ago that's just putting up yards all over the place, but we'll have to see.
Haynes King is one that I like a lot. It's there. I mean, he's proven that offense is proven. He lost Eric Singleton to one of his receivers there to Auburn, but Haynes King easily could and maybe should be in the top 10. And with the schedule that Georgia Tech has, very favorable schedule. So I like that one a lot. Lagway, potential, obviously, as just a perfectly built quarterback for, being able to handle a beating. I say that knowing that he's been hurt a lot between last year and this offseason. So we'll see how he does with that. I really don't mind his fantasy playoff schedule at Ole Miss, Tennessee at home, Florida State at home. But the schedule is absolutely brutal. So that's why he's down at 24, projected with 28 touchdowns and 9 picks and 4 rushing touchdowns. His numbers could be far north of that with one of the best offensive lines in the country, and Eugene Wilson healthy, who he was hurt most of last year, should be an absolute star, and Dallas Wilson as well filling in there. But one more I want to talk about that is another guy with potentially elite pro potential that a lot of people don't really know, but Fernando Mendoza at Indiana. So Indiana makes it to the playoff last year. They are a great quarterback-friendly system, and he's got the size to be borderline on that conversation of a first-round NFL pick with a great season because of his size and arm strength. So he's also got Surratt to throw to, Elijah Surratt. So wouldn't be surprised if Fernando Mendoza ended up somewhere as a low QB1, but definitely a QB2. So
you've also got some QBs that could fade, bust. We've already talked about 2 of them on your article, John Mateer and Byron Brown from USF. But you've also got from Michigan State, Aiden Childs. Why did you want to call him out about somebody who could potentially be a bust this year?
Well, it's just because he had so much hype and potential going into his career, really, where he's just got elite talent and just hasn't put it all together. And he's got a great receiving core to throw to with a top wide receiver as we get to that wide receiver show here soon. But I love the talent. Just got to see him put it all together. Hasn't really been able to have that good touchdown to interception ratio and make those good choices. But if he figures it out, which with experience, players can just figure it out. Like it happened with Klubnik, and he's QB1 this year. Could Childs make that leap? He totally could. But we've got to see it to believe it, and he's one where the wheels could fall off, or he could figure it out.
All right, well, good stuff. That is our look at the top 10 quarterbacks and a little bit of an intro as to what CFB Dynasty is. If you are someone that really wants to be able to go and dig into the data like BMAC has up on the screen right now, that's where you need to go to CFBDynasty.com, become a subscriber, so that way you can go and manipulate the data the way that you need it so you can prepare for your draft. So that way you can become not just an open participant, so that you can become a master of your own domain and then possibly a master in the CFB Dynasty world. BMAC, is there anything else you want to talk about before we get on out of here for this episode? The next episode, we're going to be doing the same thing we just did here, but we're going to be talking about running backs, one of the most interesting areas that you can talk about coming into the 2025 season. Anything else you want to talk about real quick before we head on out of here?
Sure. You said manipulate the rankings, and that did create a reminder for me where, yes, you can print, download Excel, CSV, these rankings. You can also search in the rankings. There's a little search box at the top that can be really helpful. And on mobile, these should be great. So if you see anything weird, let me know, but it should be great on mobile where you can just hit a little plus sign by the player and get the drop down there. So if you're scrambling for a draft or just need to see it on the go, got you there. And then there's a team and a conference, your ability to, if you export it, you can say, okay, we've had weird requests over the years where it's like, hey, can you give me rankings? My league that I'm in is Big Ten plus Notre Dame. And so, you can do that with just some simple spreadsheets. I've got some video, I think, on the YouTube channel about it. If you don't see it, though, hit me up. I'm pretty confident that it's there, though.
All right, well, good stuff. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you look underneath us into the notes so you can go and find where our social medias are, so you can go to our Discord. We try to be very active during the Discord during the regular season, so we'd love for you guys to go up there and re-energize that Discord as we're leading into the season. BMAC's going to make sure those links get into the chat notes. Otherwise, we thank you guys for coming out today for this first episode of the CFB Dynasty podcast for 2025. We'll be back soon talking about running backs. On behalf of Brian McElfresh, my name is Matt Knowles. We'll see you next time on the CFB Dynasty podcast.
Thank you for listening to the CFB Dynasty podcast. Help us out by subscribing on YouTube and reviewing us on your podcast network.